Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Red Hour, a show where twice a week I talk about a random Star Trek episode. Today's episode is called Hope and Fear, and it is a Voyager episode, and it's from season 4, episode 22. Now, first of all, I want to say I'm the dead man, if you didn't already know that. And I want to explain something real quick. So it was supposed to be a different episode when I was like flipping my cards and stuff. But as you can see, if I can get to the camera here, when I flipped the card over, I flipped it over like this, and I had that number covered up, which was the episode number. And so I didn't notice that until rewatching the video from Wednesday. And by the way, I do this show every Wednesday and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I realized that I'm actually doing episode 26 of that season. And going forward, I did find a random Star Trek episode generator, which I'll show you. Online. So I like the cards, but you got to sit there and shuffle them, and it takes time, and people, if there are people out there, they might get kind of bored with that. So I figured I'd just do it on my phone. Now this one has like the movies, and it has the animated series, which I'm not doing right now. I'm just doing TNG, TOS, Voyager, Deep Space Nine, and Enterprise. And that's even if I can get through all of those episodes. Hopefully I can. So, anyway, just wanted to get that out of the way. And I'll let because I have been getting some feedback from friends and stuff. One person told me to get a light, so I got a light. I think it looks better. I did not really expect that to make much of a difference. But it does. And by the way, if you hear noise in the background or something, that's my cat. She's just walking around and doing stuff. So anyway, the episode... And I also decided that, maybe not every episode is going to get like a number for it, a rating. Because there's going to be a lot of, this is just the middle of the road, I'll tell you when there's one I really don't like or one that I really do like, and I'll try to give that one a rating. Just because... Like I said, especially Voyager, there's a lot of just kind of middle of the road. But you can always, one of the reasons why I'm doing this is because you can always find something, or at least I think I can always find something that I like about each episode, even if it's an episode that I don't like very much. So anyway, it starts off on the holodeck, and Janeway and 709 are playing some kind of laser tag type thing, and we've seen similar things like this on TNG, and even Enterprise had an episode where they did that. A lot of people complain about that episode because they have holographic technology way too early, and I agree. They shouldn't have done that. I don't remember what episode that is, but yeah, it's why introduce something like that so soon. You've got Enterprise that they're still don't trust the transporters, and they're still like it can only beam up like cargo and stuff. So why would you introduce technologies it's not even supposed to be there until way after Kirk's time, or at least in the animated series, some people say, there's a primitive version of the holodeck. Anyway, they're in the holodeck and they're playing this game with like phasers where you gotta shoot this target, and Janeway wins the game and says something like, "Oh, this is like the first time I've won against the several times that we've been playing now," and Seven kind of gets pissed off about that, and and uh, and so then we get to like this situation is she's in a ready room, I think, and talking to Chakotay, I think. I just watched this, by the way, and my memory's already fading. Would tell you something. I'm also tired. I had to work late, and I sort of had to rush to get to this episode. So there's a data stream that has come in from Starfleet, and it's corrupted, and they're trying to like figure it out. Well, also they just so happen to have this alien guy on the ship who basically is like a well, Janeway calls him like a walking, talking, like living translator, universal translator. So she turns to the guy because he can pick up languages like very easily. He learned just from learning a few words. So again, going back to Enterprise, Hoshi was supposed to be like that, and I guess that's what they were trying to do with her, but they didn't always succeed with that. But anyway, she asked for his help, and he is able to get a message. He's able to decipher the message, and the message is telling them, it gives them coordinates to a Starfleet ship that's out in the Delta Quadrant. So they get to the ship, and it's huge. It's highly upgraded, and it's Tom Paris is on the bridge, and again, I think Chakotay's there or something, and he's saying like, this technology is way beyond what we have now, and which Voyager at the time is supposed to be like this new ship, and with the bio packs and all that stuff. So they say it has like a quantum slipstream drive, which then the ship like turns on automatically and starts flying, and the ship stops or goes to warp, slipstream warp or whatever, and they go like 15 light years in just a matter of seconds, which is a big deal for them. So that means they can get home way quicker. But of course, we're in the fourth season, people, so we're not going home anytime soon. So then there's more of a message that they're trying to figure out in this data stream, and the translator guy explains how the ship works, and how it's highly experimental, but he says, you guys, I think you guys can do it. And then, and this is in the conference room, and Seven is there, and they start talking about how they got to leave. They would have to leave Voyager behind, and Seven doesn't like that idea. She's like, I don't know about all that. It says something, and I think Harry's like optimistic, like he's always optimistic when some sort of opportunity like this comes along, and so he says, hey, just be like the Borg and adapt, and stuff like that. And she's like, well, it's not so easy to adapt sometimes, and or something like that. And so then the meeting ends, everybody leaves, and then Janeway like pulls Tuvok aside, and she's like, I don't. There's something kind of fishy about all this, because it's all way too convenient. It's Starfleet. It's a Starfleet vessel with upgraded technology. They just so happen to be in the right spot where we're at, and something's kind of fishy. And I just I want to be optimistic, but this is kind of weird to me, and I don't know how this all started. And Tuvok's like, well, it all started with our visitor. They keep calling it the visitor, or the tourist, sorry. They keep calling it the tourist. Because when they first show him, he's in the cargo bay, and he's with Neelix, and Neelix is talking him up and saying how great of a guy he is, and it helped him find some kind of something. I don't know. So then, in the engine room, Harry and B'Elanna and Seven are in the engine room, kind of adjusting things and looking things over. And Torres like mentions something about Earth and going back to the Alpha Quadrant, and Seven's like, well, you seem kind of happy about all of this, and she's like, well, not really. Not sure. I don't know. Maybe. And Seven's like, well, you're a Marquis. You presumably would be held responsible for some of the crimes you committed, and stuff like that. And she's like, well, it's possible, but you're a Borg. You could also face problems when we get back. And Seven's kind of like, yeah, I mean, that's it doesn't say that, but it's like, well, that's kind of what I'm thinking. So that's actually okay. So that's one good moment that they have between each other, because Torres like says something, and kind of like, we're both in the same boat, aren't we? And Seven gives her a look, and she's like, it's a joke. You need to learn, if you're going to be around more humans and stuff, you need to learn how to tell a joke or be funny, or have a sense of humor. And it's actually a decent moment, because usually they butt heads a lot, throughout the show. And so there's a moment there that I liked, that I was like, oh yeah, B'Elanna's being helpful. It's a good conversation, So then she goes away, and B'Elanna goes away, and then Seven's like, well, I'm gonna go talk to the captain about all of this. And so Harry's by himself, and basically he's been asked by the captain to like, and and Tuvok to kind of like look over the ship and see if there's anything suspicious, because she doesn't trust this guy. So he's doing some scans and looking around, and all of a sudden there's kind of like this little glitchy thing going on, and we see like the inside of whatever he's looking at, the panel or whatever, it like changes, almost like a hologram glitch or something. We see it, Harry doesn't, but he sees something. So he talks to Hale's Tuvok, and he's like, hey, something weird did happen. So uh, they're investigating that, and then it switches back to Seven talking to Janeway, and she's in some room. It's not I don't think it's the Astromech's lounge, but it could be the lounge. The Astromech, whatever. It's not a lounge. So they're talking, and Seven's like, I'm not going back with you. I don't want to be around humans again. And one of the things that they discover is that this slipstream technology is similar to the Borgs, so it's kind of like they would have to have Seven along in order to really make it work. But we find out later that's not really true. But so anyway, Janeway's like, well, we need you, and they get into this big argument about how she she saved her from the Borg, and she has done a lot for her and helped her. And they talk about how Seven pushes back, and she's like, you wanted me to be like you, and exploring space is a waste of time, it's inefficient, and stuff like that. And Janeway's like, well, I realize that you're not going to be exactly like me or whatever, but I've helped you realize your humanity, and you've we've done a lot for you. And she's like, well, I've done a lot for you too, But the whole purpose that Janeway's in this room in the first place is she's still trying to figure out the data stream that Starfleet sent. So she's doing like these adjustments and whatnot, and so right as they're like at the height of their argument, Janeway gets a notice that the data stream had been messed with. She like plays back the data stream, and the data stream had been messed with, and she figures out it have to be that dude, right? So she uses her comm badge, gets a hold of Tuvok, tells him, hey, this dude is lied about the data stream, but don't say anything right now. I'm beaming over with a bunch of security guards. So then he's like, affirmative or whatever he says, and so then they go on board to the ship, and she calls him out, and he's like in denial about it, and he's like, I didn't do anything, and then tries to put it on Seven, and she doesn't believe him. So then they get into a scuffle, and he presses some kind of button on this panel, and it changes it. Like I said, like kind of like a hologram. So it changes it to his ship panels. I mean, it obviously is his ship the whole entire time. And then, uh, so he, like I said, they get into a scuffle. He quickly beams everybody, like the security guards, off the ship. And then it's just Seven and Janeway on the ship with him. And he goes into a slipstream kind of into the slipstream warp. So then she's like, why are you doing all this? What did we ever do to you? Kind of thing. And he starts talking about how she made a deal with species or with the Borg over to go through their space for species 8472, and he's mad because for the longest time his race, his people had been avoiding the Borg because the species 8472 war with the Borg was kind of like distracting them or whatever. And then when she came along, it made it easier for them to find them, and they assimilated basically everybody but him, or maybe a small amount of his people are left. So he goes into Bond villain mode, and it explains his plan. Basically saying his plan was to get the whole crew on the ship and fly into assimilated space or Borg infested space and have them all assimilated. And she's like, well, you would be assimilated too. And he's like, that's, so be it, or whatever he says. And that's kind of interesting idea. I see what they're saying. Like there's consequences for what our heroes do when they, they're not like violating the Prime Directive. So, and they're just doing regular stuff. It still could affect some other warp civilization out there. If they make a peace treaty with the Klingons, what does that do for the Romulans? That type of thing. And those ideas are valid. It's something that could affect them. But she's like, well, there's no way I could have known that. And he's just like, I don't care, I'm just out for revenge. And so Seven and Janeway are in the brig. Well, there was I guess they were trying to be funny. Because they show the ship real quick, and they're like, well, we can, because they had been making adjustments to the to Voyager to give them like this technology, but it can only work like temporarily or something. And so they're trying to track down this guy, and Chakotay says something like, oh, if I know anything, it's that Captain Janeway has a plan. So then they show Janeway and Seven in the brig, and she's like, says something like, I don't know what we're gonna do, or so I guess they were trying to be funny or something. And so then she's like testing the force field, putting her hand up against it, and she makes a mention that that the Borg, could just walk right through it, and that kind of gives Seven an idea to kind of, use her little eye attachment thing to adjust the nanobots in her body so that it could adapt to the force field. So then, um, so she walks through the force field, turns it off, and they start. They're like in the engine room. Go to the engine room and start messing with like the ship. And they still have like Starfleet controls on the panel. And but one thing I wanted to bring up is like there's a conversation in the brig where, because this guy mentions that, Seven, wouldn't she feel better going back to the Borg? And so there's a conversation in the brig where Janeway's like, 9 months ago, I was freeing you from the Borg, and you were slowly regaining your humanity, and she's like, I'm your captain, which means that I can't always be your friend. And she's like, do you understand that? And Seven's like, well, I would if, no, I don't understand that, but once we get assimilated, I would know your thoughts and I would be able to understand it better. And Janeway kind of looks at her funny, and she's like, oh, it's a joke, Captain. So she learned something, in the episode, kind of took advice from Torres and kind of took advice from Janeway. So I thought that was some character development there. It's always good to have that a little, even if it's a little bit. So then they, they have that conversation and then start messing with the ship. And then, at the same time, Voyager is like catching up to them, and they're almost near Borg space, and Janeway bursts into the bridge, and she's like trying to convince him to not go through with this, and he's hell bent on it, and he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. And then Voyager or Seven does something to get their shields down, and they beam out of there. And then I think it's like the last shot is him on his ship, just kind of facing these giant Borg cubes, and you hear the, you will be assimilated, resistance is futile. And so, like I said, most of these episodes, which is weird, this is the fourth season, and this is where, in the fourth season is where 7 and 9 is introduced. In every Star Trek series, there's a person like Spock, learning to be human or learning to deal with his humanity, and that carries over into the movies, and which is an interesting discussion in and of itself through TOS and the movies, and him dying, coming back to life, stuff like that. And then, of course, with Data, he wants to become human, or the best that he can, and that they sort of go over that throughout the series, and then a little bit in the movies, and then they sort of redeemed it a little bit in Picard season 3, and where he finally does basically become human. And then, of course, in Enterprise, you have T'Pol, who's 100% Vulcan, and learns to like deal with the humans and get along with them, and eventually have a relationship with one, and so on and so forth. And then you have on Voyager, well, you have Tuvok and him, dealing with him, and he gets some good episodes, I think. And then, of course, Seven. I don't know what they were doing with Cass, but I hated it. I did not like that character. I think I said that in the last video. And they kind of uglied her up too. She was pretty hot there towards the end. And then Deep Space Nine is a little different because it introduces, I guess you have Odo, who's, learning to deal with himself and his relationship with the changelings and stuff like that. So each series has a character like that, where they explore their, because Star Trek is partially about exploring humanity, and the story of the human race, or the lack of humanity or whatever. So this episode kind of deals with that a little bit, and how going back to the Alpha Quadrant would be hard to adjust to when you've just been freed from the Borg in less than a year. And so I'm glad that they do touch on that, and it's not the only time. So that aspect of the episode, I would say, is really good. But it's weird because it's like the last episode before the 5th season. And I'm like, usually, I guess in TNG, they would end with like 2-parters or something. And this was just your run-of-the-mill average episode. So why they chose to do it like that, I don't know. But it's like I said, it's not terrible. The bad guy in this it's just a revenge plot, and there's no, the way it ended kind of reminded me of like those episodes of the Twilight Zone where the guy's just accepting his own fate or whatever. There's nothing too terribly crazy about it. He's just, and his alien makeup is just, he has a bigger head and smaller ears. Not much to that. So I've been getting, I gave Muse a 6.5, and last week was like a 5, and this one's another like 5.5. I'll give them points for touching on the humanity stuff, and You know, that's why I don't really want to rank them, because it's like it's either gonna be really shitty, really good, or meh, eh, it's one of those. I'm not purposely going to seek this one out again, but if it happens to be on, it's not gonna hurt my feelings either. Uh, so yeah, depending on the episode and how much I have to say about it, will depend the length of each one. Uh, this one's kind of short. There's not much I wanted to say about it. I mean, we're doing good on time. I mean, we're almost at an hour. I kind of wanted it to be an hour each show, but there's only so much you can say about certain things, and it's, I mean, who wants to listen to me talk and mumble and say 1,000 times for an hour? Maybe some people will tolerate like 20 minutes or 30 minutes or something like that. If I had more to say about this, I would. There's going to be episodes where I might have more to say about it. And then I might, it might provoke thought that I didn't think of last time I saw it, or whatever. So, like I said, I have this random episode generator. So, right now, that's just what I pulled it up. So, we're going to randomize it and see what we get. Because I think the way I was like shuffling those cards, that's why I kept coming up with, I wasn't shuffling good enough, and, stuff like that. So, let's see what I get. What does that say? It's fucking Voyager again. Okay. Episode 6. Season 6. It's like the universe wants me to just do a fucking Voyager reviews or something. It's season 6, episode 25, The Haunting of Deck 12. I remember that one. Neelix is telling like a ghost story to the kids, the bored kids, because there's like a power outage or something, and it's not bad. It's another, I can already, like, I'll do the review, but I can already tell you it's probably around a 6.5 maybe. It's a cute one, I can't believe, even when I abandon my cards and go to fucking the internet, I end up with another Voyager episode. But hey, maybe there's people out there that are watching Voyager right now, and they're like, I wonder if there's another person who could who did a review on YouTube of this Voyager episode I'm watching. And maybe they'll find my video, and maybe they'll like it, and maybe they'll tell their friends, and maybe this channel grows from there. I don't know. But anyway, thanks for coming out. If you're out there, I don't see anybody in the chat, but maybe I'm wrong. I could check it to see. I don't even see where I'm at. I don't even see me. View channel. Is there anybody out there? There are people out there. Holy shit. To see. So, I don't even see where I'm at. I don't even see me. Hey, there are people out there. I can't see the chat. I'm sorry. And then if I go on, I think I saw Darren M out there. Hello, hello to everybody out there. There's actually people. Uh, it's that's cool as shit. I'm gonna try to figure out how I can see the chat. I'm using OBS. Uh, and I'm completely 100% new to this stuff. So if anybody could leave comments or messages or something when this is over, which is going to be over in just like a few minutes, please feel free to say something. But that's great to hear. So anyway, Star Trek Voyager, The Haunting of Deck 12 or whatever I fucking said. Yeah, Haunting of Deck 12. I will see you guys Wednesday, 8 p.m. I'm the Dead Man. This is the Red Hour. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is awesome. And I will see you guys then.